Good morning, everyone. It is Monday. It is Monday. It's very Monday. It is Monday, the 1st of February. My green screen is eating my blanket. Let's put the blanket on me, and not on. There we go. Hello. This is going to be the most Monday stream in the history of Monday streams. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be awake. I'm bordering on like not still slightly not wanting to exist, which there was a strong presence of over the weekend. Yeah, I had a really bad weekend. So the bit of background is worth noting that for the past ever, I've not had a weekend. I've never had a normal Monday to Friday job because I haven't been capable of it. So weekends were not relevant. Where I was working the past year, weekends were in fact the time where I had to do the most work hours, because that's when people play games. If you work for a game, then and you need to be on when the players are, then you're on the weekend and on Pacific time hours. So I don't really know what a weekend is. And neither does my mental illness. Because I spent most of the weekend pretty much unable to function. I'm laughing about it now, which is a terrible habit I have. I can't remember which of my previous therapists pointed out that when things are the most traumatic are when I'm making the most jokes about them. But it has definitely been pointed out to me in the past. It was really shit. It lasted a very long time, weekend, in the way that time does now. It was really horrible to be in my head. I was also in a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of pain again now. I'm always in pain. I don't know why I'm emphasizing the presence of pain, given that it's always there. But maybe just as a reminder to myself that there is pain there. I'm not with it. It is a miracle I am out of bed. I don't really know how I'm out of bed. My alarm went off at 9 and I didn't then go back to sleep, but getting out of bed was a process. It is about 11 a.m. now. Honestly, that's not very long at all. But yeah, I spent a lot of the weekend in a very bad headspace, trying to get out of it by doing things like to distract myself, finding after 5 or 10 minutes that I couldn't do that thing because it wasn't distracting me, or my thoughts and emotions and things were interfering, getting frustrated, going back to bed, getting frustrated of being in bed, getting up, trying to do something, and like getting stuck in this cycle. Saturday was especially bad. And Sunday was better, but not significantly so. So this is not surprising. It is not something I'm upset. But it's not something I'm concerned about. I did have some good bits in there, especially yesterday. I managed to sit down and play some music and feel myself a bit. So I've got that I might post up later to make myself feel better. I did a lot of writing when I was in the points where I was able to distract myself, and that worked as a way to distract myself. I think I wrote 7,000 words. I wrote quite a lot. And I would rather be writing now, so hopefully I can then use that later on to make myself feel a bit better too. But yeah, it's not surprising. Last week was really the actual first week of my PhD. I did so many things that are so difficult for me. Like if we sit and I take you through what I did last week. On Monday I had 2 Zooms, both of which were intense and stressful in different ways. Bearing in mind doing one of those in a day is really intense for me. Then so doing 2 back to back was a lot. I then had a food delivery in the evening and like other stuff going on to worry about, getting everything set up. I streamed the next day. I did that workshop with 20 people I don't know the day after. I raided in WoW that evening, which whilst it's a fun thing is also another thing involving people. Then had mentoring on Thursday. I had a coffee morning on Friday where I networked with people who were all lovely, but also it was still stressful. And then I also streamed. So I don't know if anyone else. Hi MVP. I don't know if anyone else watched Arthremis's amazing Through Our Eyes stream on Saturday. I wasn't able to watch all of it because of not feeling amazing. But there was a point where she asked everyone, how do you handle being a like content creator and also someone, or a lot of them had disabilities or chronic illnesses. How do you handle all of that? And I really resonated with the person who turned around and just said badly. That's also my answer. And I suspect that the way I'm going to handle the first few months of my PhD is also badly. I think certainly my body's going to handle it badly. My mind is clearly handling it badly, and that's going to happen. And it might mean that, these first few months, things take me a bit longer. But it's worth reminding myself. It's a miracle that I'm doing this at all. So. Parts of my body keep disappearing because of my green screen. I am going to fix that. I'm sorry this happens every time. It's to do with the lighting. If the lighting in here is even slightly different day to day, which obviously it is because the light from the window is different day to day, it changes what is happening. So it's not too bad. I'm gonna leave it for now, but if it starts to annoy me more, I'm gonna edit it. But yeah, so I've gotten myself up and I've gotten myself here. I sort of hoped that after that some productivity would manifest. We'll see whether it does. My plan for today was those couple of things where I was setting in motion, asking people for information, feedback, recommendations, assistance, variations thereupon, which I'm not going to do on stream. I'm going to save that for later today. And then the other thing we were going to do was we were going to do some reading. So this is... Don't get green screened out. You're not green. This is Understanding Comics, or Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art, by Scott McCloud, which is an amazing book that I read last year when preparing a paper on depression and shame, where one of the main things that I looked at was the comic Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh. And so I read this book on my supervisor's recommendation in order to learn how the fuck comics work. And it's really good. It's really helpful. What I wanted to do was go through it and go through my notes on it, which I've not opened. Do that now. Okay, we're just going to do this slowly. We can do this. So this will be in my disability and illness notes. I've not typed these notes up yet. Okay. I'll get the book. Okay. I feel like this is probably what most people are like on a Monday, but just I've not seen the actual evidence for it before. Also, I opened the last stream in order to check that I'd had everything set up right. I do this periodically to make sure like the sound is okay and so forth. And instantly just hated the sound of my own voice and the image of my own face. So it's what It's going well. Oh, what is where are these notes? There we go. There's my understanding comics notes. Just gonna If you're new here, whenever you see me doing that, which looks super weird, that's just me lifting myself up so I can sit cross-legged on my chair. Because being cross-legged is often more comfortable for me with my body. my various body issues. Okay. I was going to take us onto the Zotero screen. Instead, I'm going to take us onto here. This is. I'm trying. I'm really trying. I don't want to start dissociating. Okay, we're going to keep going. If I have to stop, I'm. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to breathe. Hi, Addie. Thank you for following. Hello, people who are coming in. I have quite severe chronic illness issues, including mental illness issues, and I've had a very bad weekend, and it's very hard to be here right now. So I'm just having a small trouble with that. I'm here and I'm trying to do some work, but I'm really struggling. Okay, I'm going to try and explain this and see if I'm struggling with focusing on things, and just with being. I'm just struggling with being. That's the best explanation. It might be that I'm not able to do things today. If I'm not, I have to remind myself that that's okay, and that's a thing that happens. But it's very hard to do that sometimes. I also know that I need to move this chat box. That you're not chatting on my head. Done that. Okay, that's the thing. But yeah, one of the I'm the PhD researcher. That's the thing. Thank you, Addie. I know. I do genuinely try and talk myself through when this happens. So that's as much. I'm not just doing this because the stream is here. But one of the reasons that I do stream this is to show you that it's not particularly plain sailing doing a PhD if you're ill. So I think it probably doesn't help that when I was getting really stuck over the weekend and dissociating very badly, I was sitting in this room. Normally I don't, because I use I'm in my office and I use this room for a lot of things, and normally it's not too much of a problem, but probably those like emotional memories are a bit too recent. So we're gonna try. All I really need to do with this book is look for things that relate to the use of comics to manipulate the reader as they're reading them, or to create a particular. Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't leave the house a few years ago. I couldn't have done any of this. I did a master's degree last year, guys. I did a master's degree in a pandemic. Um, I got a fucking distinction in my master's degree during a pandemic as a person who couldn't leave the house a few years before. Thank you, Addie. You're you're so lovely. Thank you so much. I am awesome. I do know that. This is yeah. So for the ooh. Oh, look at that. That's my makeup on my face. Yeah, exactly. So for those who may not know me as well, who are newer here, I'm going to explain this because I'm quite good at explaining this, and it'll give me a moment to calm down cryptically, given what I'm going to explain. So I have mental illness characterized by anxiety, which you probably noticed, and depression. I do have technical diagnoses, but I don't tend to list them because I have problems with the ways mental illness is diagnosed. I'm not going to get into that rant now, but they're trauma based for me. I had a lot of trauma when I was a child, which was mostly in the form of very severe peer bullying, and as a result, when I was about 18, I had a breakdown, and I spent a lot of years not really able to do anything at all. I had a lot of therapy. I've been on, I think at this point, most medications. I think if it's, I've definitely had every kind of antidepressant. Like in terms of the different classes of them, not necessarily every formulation. And it has been a really long journey, and I have come a very long way. And I am very proud of that, and I am here doing a PhD, and that is awesome. And it's really important to remember. It is also really important to remember that you can heal and get better and still be very ill, and that's the reality for a lot of people who live with not just mental illness but all different kinds of chronic illness. I've also developed a chronic pain condition called fibromyalgia, which again is caused by trauma, because everything is caused by people calling me a teacher's pet when I was a teenager. Thanks, guys. It's really important to show that you can be at the point where you are successful and you are doing really well. It can get worse because of the success. If I had spent the last week not doing a PhD, I wouldn't have spent this weekend experiencing such intense intrusive thoughts. I wouldn't have been dissociating so badly. I wouldn't have been so tired, and I wouldn't have been in that much pain. These things are connected. There's a lot of reasons that I'm feeling like this right now. But amongst them is that one of the reasons is a really good reason. Excuse me, I'm inhaling my cat's hair. She's not even in here. How have I got cat hair in my mouth? This is a really a weird time to also have cat hair in your mouth. My cat is short-haired, but she's exceedingly fluffy, so this is a perpetual problem. Also, my water bottle is green, not translucent, as it appears to be. So yeah, there are gonna be days where I don't stream. And there are going to be days where I come here to show you me doing my PhD, and this is what you get, because this is what I get some days. So I'm going to explain. I'm going to return to trying to explain. My God, we've been here 25 minutes already. And okay, I'm going to return to trying to explain. It freaks me out a bit as well. Also, my teeth are disappearing now as I'm talking, so I am gonna. It's this one. It's gonna look a bit weird just for a second. There we go. I have to change how intense the green screen setting is sometimes. Yes, so I'm going to explain what it is I'm looking for in here, because it might not take very long, and if we can do that, and if that's all we do, that's okay, because I got up and I got here. So that's pretty cool. So what I'm looking for, I kind of started saying this before I then started crying, is I want to find stuff that's about manipulating the reader specifically to create a deliberate experience in them, because I then want to think about how that is used to impart the experience of living with mental illness upon people. If you are new here, that's basically what my PhD is. I'm technically doing a PhD in English, but only because my university doesn't offer a PhD in the medical humanities, which is my field. You can use, in fact, I'll for you. That explains what the medical humanities is. I know up here I need to put something behind the text so that people reading chat on the video can. But yeah, basically, I'm looking at illness narratives, which is stories of illness. And what I'm specifically looking at is weird and different narrative forms. And I'll give you some examples of those in a second. That specifically try not to show the reader not to show the reader a person living with mental illness, but to impart upon the reader or viewer the experience of what it's like to live with mental illness. So I use the term embodied experience. Embodied experience is just shorthand basically for this is what it's like to live with this mental illness, rather than, you know, this is here is a person that you can look at with it, in the way that you're viewing me right now. So the forms that I'm looking at are things that specifically, the thing that is often common within them is that they do manipulate the reader in some way to make them feel a particular way, or they immerse the reader in some way because they're interactive. So for example, video games are on my list, interactive and visual novels are on my list, like that sort of thing. Graphic novels are on my list, and the reason that we're then looking at this theory is to remind me how, because I know they do it, but I need the references on how. They manipulate the reader with things like the way things are laid out on the page. In English-speaking comics, you read left to right. So you're going to be trained, if this is your comic book page and it's divided into 4 quarters, you are naturally going to read 1, 2, 3, 4. So top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. If it's split into 4. But comics can mess with you by doing things like splitting them into 3 horizontally, or splitting into 3 vertically, or splitting it like in a weird, different, chaotic way. And that is a way that a comic or a graphic novel, term you want to use, can impart a specific kind of experience onto the person reading it. So I'm going to go through my notes first of all. This is my notes from when I read this book before. Welcome to my quite hard to read sometimes handwriting. This is my PhD notebook, so I'm going to take notes on my notes. More, I'm going to write down the page references. We'll then have a look, and this is the book that we're looking through. This is Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. You will find on this top-down camera, this one here, hello, you're not going to be able to read my notes fully. That bit I'm sorry about. You're also not going to be able to read the book fully. That's deliberate. This is not my book. I mean, it is my book. This is my physical copy of the book. The text is not mine. The images are not mine. So it's deliberately. Also, it's a shitty webcam. But that's kind of deliberate because I don't have the rights to give you all that. So, yeah, I'm going to take some breaths. I'm going to write a title. I typed my notes up on Friday because I did that off stream. I haven't put the notes I've been taking whilst researching into Zotero. Zotero is the program that I use for managing my references. It's also where I put all of my notes on books and articles and things that I've read. But I've been putting my research notes and notes from my supervisions into Notion because they're not referenced in the same way, and that way I have them all collected together separately. So that's what I've done thus far. I was talking about maybe not doing that until I had more and knew what I wanted to do, but then I realised that actually I had like 5 or 6 already, so I just put them all in there. What is the date? I've already said that. 1st of February. Okay. Oh, okay, that's a good reference, first of all. So that was page 30. So this note I've got here is when you look at realistic faces, you see other people. But when you look at a cartoon, you see yourself. So there is something about automatically placing yourself into that position in the cartoon. Rather than like viewing. Being, not viewing. There's also something here about pictures being received versus writing being perceived. So I want to look at that page as well. Just to dive into that idea a bit more. Okay. This is good. So one of the things that makes articulating the embodied experience different is that there's a really common theme in not just mental illness but chronic illness in general of experiencing time differently. There is a concept called crip time, which my captions really struggled with. So it's crip time, as in cripple time. And it's important to note that cripple is a slur when used by other people, but it's a word that has been reclaimed by disabled people. So if you hear me talking about crip time or crip theory or something like that, that's okay for me to do as a disabled person and someone who identifies that way and can use that word, but it's very much a reclaimed word, and I would be careful using it. In fact, I would advise you not to use it if you're not part of the disability community. So this quote I have here says, "Comics panels fracture both time and space, offering a jagged staccato rhythm of unconnected moments," which really clicks into that idea of an episodic narrative being the way to access what's called a chaos narrative. There's a theorist called Arthur Frank who defined different sorts of illness narrative. The standard one is person is fine, person gets ill, person either recovers or dies, you know, like that very standard linear arc. And he defines something as chaos narrative, and says that you can't really tell a chaos narrative, but there's a lot of kickback against that in the medical humanities. That's kind of what my PhD is me going, but no. So Sarah Wasson is a theorist who's written about it in relation to chronic pain specifically, and how chronic pain is best articulated through episodic form, or short form, or broken up form, because that best communicates the experience of chronic pain given the temporal distortion. So it's really interesting to find something about temporal distortion in comics. Then yeah, there's then some stuff about comics making the reader a more active participant because their imagination is engaged so much more. I know there's a bunch in there of like discussions of how you transition from image to image, a bit of what I was talking about before about that sort of how things are spaced out and how the gutters, which is the gaps between panels, are used, and what happens as you're passing through the gutters. Comics have some interesting terminology when you then think of a sentence. Also, can we just notice that the thing that has calmed me down during my research? 10 minutes ago I was crying. I'm gonna start crying again. So yeah, so things like I've got a note here that says the other senses exist in the moment that you aren't receiving info, such as in the gutters. What your senses do then is extrapolate from what you've received before. Like you're constantly processing, because the images are almost more static. Like when you're reading a book, you've got to like fully follow along. Thank you, Eddie. You're constantly like reading, constantly taking the information in and processing it. Whereas comics are much more images here, and you look at the image and you're still thinking about it as you move on to the next one. It's that sort of thing. Using different panel sizes, shapes, and positions can change how time moves. So it can literally change how you're reading. That's one I want to look at as well. And also for anyone who is new here, what I'm doing right now, I started my PhD a week ago. So what I'm doing is an intro thing. I'm not doing a standard literature review. What I'm doing is pulling together all of my ideas. I have a lot of different forms that I'm looking at, as I mentioned before. So I'm producing a like 3,000 to 5,000 word write-up of what those forms are, why they're important, what the common themes are between them all, a bit of how I think they function and what I'm going to be looking for within them. So really what we're doing at the moment is not like a really intense dive into everything, but just me pulling out key themes where I can say comics do stuff with time, comics do stuff with the space in between images, that sort of thing, where I can then highlight those, like the interactivity side of it, where I can highlight those key themes, identify what they are, and argue for why comics and graphic novels are a form that follows with what my thesis is about. Yeah, like I know there's a load of stuff in here on the interplay between images and words, and the power of using words within comics and the interplay between them. But that's probably like a deeper level that I need to get to at this time. That's an interesting quote, and I don't know what it's from. So this quote says, "No other human being can ever know what it's like to be you from the inside." Which is especially interesting given that what I'm trying to find is things that prove that wrong effectively, and things that not fully. I don't think you can fully experience someone else's embodied experience. That's not possible, because everything you experience is informed by who you are, your memories, your, you know, all of the things about you. You're always going to have that element of separation. It's about trying to bridge that gap, and forms that do as much as they can to bring you into that embodied experience. It's not saying that it's an absolute thing. So I'm really interested to see what else is on that page. I also have, so I have this one, this Understanding Comics also has, not a companion, but like he did another book called Making Comics, and I think that's arriving tomorrow. So that will be exciting, because that will then give me even more ideas. One of the things I want to do, I know that, so I will show you a little bit of this, again you won't be able to read it fully, but obviously this is a graphic novel, this book of graphic novel theory, but it still has citations. So like there's a citation down here. So part of what I also want to do now is go through and pull those citations out and see if there's other stuff where I can have, because it's not, I don't need to fully cite this 5,000 words I'm putting together, but being able to will help make my argument stronger. Okay, I think that's a good start. So I should move that over there. It'll just be in the way. So I'm gonna look up these 5 pages. Oh, that's really creepy. Just almost need page 36, and I just randomly pulled a page open and I got to page 35. I'm also going to breathe some more. My back is very painful. It's not helping. So the really cool thing about this comic is that one of the things he does is he'll show as well as telling. He'll like do a thing, so you can, because this is the bit that's I'm talking about seeing yourself rather than another person. So obviously you've got like the different examples here. So like he says, if you look at a realistic drawing of a face and has a panel with a realistic drawing, then you see another person. But then in a cartoon you see yourself, and he has the example of, because this is him. This is a cartoon version of the author. And he's sort of showing, he shows as an example himself in a full realistic style, and was like, would you find it as easy to listen to me if I looked like this? So it doesn't look like there's any citations. There's like it's good. There's really good quotes in here. There's a lot more than what I've pulled out. So in this panel, for example, we've got with 2 panels. The cartoon is a vacuum into which our identity and awareness are pulled, an empty shell that we inhabit, which enables us to travel in another realm. We don't just observe the cartoon, we become it, which is exactly the thing that I'm talking about. So I might just highlight it actually to say, hey, this is a good one. We know page 36 is a really good. I'm just checking the following pages just to see if there's anything else that goes on to. Okay, now he's sort of going into talking about almost talking about personifications and object identity, which is relevant, interesting, but not as like, yeah, let's definitely use that. So page 49. This was the okay, that's not it's kind of useful, but not as correctly. 67. And I think so I have about 10 forms, and that's with grouping some together. I also have one that I'm thinking about dropping, just because I don't think it offers as much without me going really deep into it. So that's experimental writing and experimental poetry. I think they're really good at communicating the embodied experience, but I think in order to explain how, I would need to go significantly further, because they're so varied, and it's not a product of like, it's not a single unified form. Obviously comics, for example, do things in different ways, but the base concept of the form is unified, right? Whereas I don't think with experimental writing, there's that same like sense of unity. You've got experimental writing that looks like it has a standard form but just messes with you linguistically. You've got experimental writing where I don't remember what, but in one of my creative writing class, we read a book where there was text just like randomly all over the page, and it just sort of went off the page at points, and that's sort of so you've got things that do that. You've got poetry that plays with shape and form. I think poetry probably is a bit more unified in that sense. But to take experimental writing in general, I think possibly is just a bit too much. And I think it's also important to note that I'm not as interested in it. Like, I like experimental writing, but I'm not as drawn to it as I am to graphic novels, despite having not grown up reading comics other than Garfield. And Snoopy. I had Garfield and Snoopy books. I think I might still have my Garfield book. I don't know if I got rid of. Don't know if I was able to bring myself to get rid of them. But yeah, so I think I'm probably actually going to drop that one. But otherwise, I think I'm about 500 words per thing. So, but that's going to go really quickly. By the time I've explained what the form is, what the main themes are, how the main themes manifest, and some examples of primary sources I have, those 500 words are going to disappear. So even though this doesn't look like I've pulled out a lot of stuff, actually it's going to be plenty, because realistically in those 500 words I might have 4 or 5 references at most, and that would be quite dense. Yeah, so this is the bit about stuff happening in the gutter. Comic panels fracture both time and space, offering a jagged staccato rhythm of unconnected moments. Closure allows us to connect these moments and mentally construct a continuous, unified reality. So that's really interesting in relation to Frank and chaos narrative, because what he basically says is that we all constantly want to make a narrative out of our lives, and I think that part is true. We want to construct our understanding of the world into narrative. That's how we work as people. But it takes some, like, the process of doing that is part of the embodied experience of living with illness. And so that's where, and I think, so this is the example of those jagged, disconnected moments. So I think that's a really good part to quote, and I might actually quote that, just literally have that panel in my write-up, because it's a really good example of like how it's done. I'm also sorry that my arm periodically disappears. And the idea of comics as closure, and that, so closure in this context isn't just the like final closure, but the like all the like little closures of growing understanding, like where you're connecting those disconnected moments, that each connection you make is closure, and then the connection as a whole is then that final closure. That's really useful as well. I'm not feeling as emotional anymore, but I've definitely got a knot in my chest. Definitely like there is anxiety now. We're getting there. So this one is about panel size, shape, and position. And this is really expanding on what we just had, because it's talking about how do you create a pause. So we've got the example of a pause being created up here by the same panel being shown multiple times, but then we've also got the example of the gutters being extended here and here, so for a description of that. So it's the same sort of thing. There's two people talking to each other. The first panel is one person asking a question, and the last panel is someone answering it. In one example, they just show 3 consecutive panels, all with the same image of the person who's about to respond. You can also pull the panel and make it, that middle panel, and make it wider, so that like you've got that sense of length of pause. But then there's also just pulling the panels apart from each other and having wider gutters, and the like lots of different ways in which you can do that. So I think that's good as like an extension of what we just looked at. Yeah. So then, 194 was about the transfer of the embodied experience. This might sort of sum it up quite well. Also, yes, there was colour in it suddenly. There's only like when he's talking about colour, there's then suddenly colour. Okay, this is really cool. So he's making, he makes the point that we talked about, that you can't fully transfer your embodied experience to someone else because it's always going through a medium of some form. But here on page 197, there is a point specifically about, so I'll just read it to you because that's easier. Comics is one of the very few forms of mass communication in which individual voices still have a chance to be heard. Those of us who tackle the business of comics have many obstacles to overcome, but they pale in comparison to what a filmmaker or playwright has to contend with. Comics welcomes any writer or artist to step into a world as close as pen or pencil and paper. So it's about the accessibility of the form, and also the amount of change that occurs in that form. So the idea is that a comics artist, the only thing that gets in the way between what they're experiencing in their mind, or what they're wanting to convey, and what comes out on the page, is the form itself, and the limitations of what you can put down, and the fact that everyone else is going to bring their own understanding to things. Whereas if you're thinking in terms of a film, that film goes through hundreds of people. It goes different hands. It goes through editors. It goes through actors. It goes through writers. It comes from all different places. Think of the amount of difference that the cinematography of a film can have upon it. And that makes it much more complicated because it's much further removed from that initial embodied experience. Because you're never going to get an entire film crew who all have like similar enough experiences that they're going to come out with a unified product. Or if you do, it's not going to be like a standard mass communication kind of film. So this is a really good point about accessibility. We mean here in like the sense of how easy it is for anyone to do the form as well, what the barriers are for doing it, because the more barriers there are in a form, the fewer marginalized voices you hear. The moment you have something that requires like a lot of money to get into, for example, or a privileged position like traditional publishing, for example, is really, really racist, and more white people get published more easily because publishing is racist. Traditional publishing is less accessible to people of colour, and to many other marginalised identities. But self-publishing, for example, much more accessible to them because they have control of it. Comics has a similar thing. You can just make a comic and post it on the internet, and it will get more bandwidth. That's what I really want. Comics are inherently more shareable than a novel. Anyone can publish a novel on the internet, but it's not quite the same as it's easier to have a viral webcomic than it is to have a viral novel that you posted on your blog, that sort of thing. And that's partly just the way we function and the way we use the internet right now. It's technically possible that could not be true, but it's not the way it works at the moment. And that accessibility is another one of my key themes that I'm finding through all of my forms. So thanks, book. That's awesome, because that's got everything I need to be able. I didn't check half of those questions. I'm going to quickly go through those again, just make sure it was just him making a point, not citing it. Nothing there. 194, 101. I know I checked the first couple. Nope. 60. I definitely checked the first. Okay, cool. I'm sure I can find other theorists, and I've got another book that is arriving tomorrow as well, which is called Graphic Medicine Manifesto, which I just got because my supervisor's reading it, and I'm creepy. But also, like, I looked at it and it looks like it's going to have some useful stuff in. So I'll have a look at those as well. But I think that gives me a really good basis for writing all of that up. So my plan is, when we stream on Wednesday, I'm going to read one of my primary sources then. And I put that I was just going to read one of them, but what I might actually do is skim both to be able to say, these are the common themes I've identified. This is some theory that backs it up. and here's a primary source example. So like actually fish through Fun Home and Solutions and Other Problems, specifically 4 examples of this, and pull them out, and possibly reuse some of the examples I had from my shame and depression essay, which has basically formed the basis for this entire bit of my PhD. And the only other thing then that I wanted to talk about in that bit in terms of graphic novels is the idea of graphic novels and comics being like one of the easier ways to do this, not just in terms of accessibility, but like it is easier for people to understand that a comic is manipulating them than it is to think about the fact that some other forms are. I don't know. That's not coming out right because it doesn't really make any sense because I'm countering it all in my head immediately. But yeah, I don't know. There's something in there about it being a good first example that I haven't quite like worked through yet. That I need to chew on from. Did the thing? Shall I put? Did the thing? I'm really tired. Even managed to concentrate for that long. I don't feel. It's weird because I don't feel like I ever moved out of that place of panic and mild breakdown. I don't. I am feeling a lot of things right now. But I did the thing. Okay. I bring. Ooh. Bringing my list in front of me. I've streamed. And check that off. I've done a stream. We have read Understanding Comics. I'm not going. I think I'm. Thank you, Eddie. Oh, my teeth are still disappearing. Because you know my teeth are so green. Thanks, green screen. I think I'm not going to include experimental writing. I think I am going to throw that out. I'm okay. I've got so many forms that I think cutting something somewhere so I can focus more deeply, like in the PhD as a whole, is good. Which means I don't have that to do. And when we made this list last week, I deliberately made my daily lists really short, and we had this whole discussion about how I wanted to balance having a plan with not having so much of a plan if I had a hard day, like now, that I could still look at it and I could still check off everything and feel that I'd achieved everything. I've got to send a message. I've got to send an email. That's the other thing on my list. And then it's done, and I've got other things that I can then do, like watering my plants and doing some laundry. They'll offer a different kind of success and achievement. And I think it's really easy because I know what will happen is in a minute I'm going to stop streaming and I'm going to have that sense of like, yeah, achievement. I did it. I did the thing. I effectively solved the problem that I had in thinking of the problem as being, you know, needing to pull those quotes out and make sure that the theory backs up my hypotheses, and it would be really easy that feeling to disappear, and for one of the weasels in my brain to go, yeah, but that was only an hour of work. You're meant to be doing 8 hours a day, and that thought can fuck off. Yeah, so it's really good progress. I think I'd love by the end of this week to have the graphic novel stuff written up. I think that's possible, but it will only be possible if on the days where I'm struggling, like right now, because I can still feel myself. Yeah, exactly. I can still feel myself wanting to hyperventilate. It's that tension in my chest. And I noticed it in therapy a couple of weeks ago. A lot of my anxiety symptoms, especially, and a lot of the emotions I get are sort of situated in this bit of my chest, like where my sternum is, basically. And I have a constant sense of pain and hurt there. And I'm really hyper aware of it right now. And that obviously is where that feeling of not being able to breathe comes from as well. So I think I need to go a bit slower. I've got therapy tomorrow, so that's going to help. And I've got a workshop, that's a recorded one, to watch tomorrow. I like thrown it, sitting on it. Yeah, and the whole point, we didn't set a deadline on this first thing. We didn't set a deadline because I didn't know how long it was going to take me. And it takes me as long as it does, and if it takes me more than 3 years to do my PhD, that's okay too. I'm only 2 weeks in. I don't know why I'm already panicking about finishing on time. 3 years. I only have to have 10,000 words done by the end of, by 10 months in. That's 1,000 words a month. That's nothing. It doesn't have to be final words. They don't have to be like final, fully edited words. I'm fine by every measure of doing enough. And I'm just never gonna feel like I'm doing enough. Oh, I'm glad, Addie. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't, I'm very nerdy and I'm into a lot of like, comics fandoms. But I didn't grow up reading comics. We didn't have a lot, like it. I grew up in the countryside, and it's not like there was no comic book shop. You couldn't go and get them. You had whatever the village shop had, which was not much. And like I read some comics. I had Garfield books and stuff, but Garfield books not exactly the the cutting edge of comics. Thank you. I'm really glad. It was not mine. It's not it's not my idea. It's this theorist and this comic book artist. But when I started looking at it for this, Garfield Law does run deep. Garfield was a wise cat. I have a Garfield in here somewhere. I think he's in the cupboard. Yeah, I didn't grow up reading in it. I got interested in it through things like the Marvel fandom and stuff, where I was introduced through other forms, and then came to be really interested in comics and how they worked, and I started to read some more. I had some friends who were into comics, and I went, "Whoa, what should I read?" And they made me read a bunch of things that were really great, and started to show me like what comics could be. And I now read more comics in other fandoms that I'm interested in. I still haven't got the Dragon Age ones yet. I'm gonna do it this year. I'm gonna buy them this year. They're bringing out like more collections of them together, so I can just like get them all at once. If you're new here, Dragon Age is my favorite computer game ever. It makes my life better, and I love it very much. But yeah, so I'd never really been into comics, and then I went to write I had to write an assignment for my disability and illness in American culture module last year. And I found myself wanting to write about shame and depression, and then I actually found myself looking at examples of shame and depression as represented in different media, and I realised that Hyperbole and a Half, which is Ali Brosh's webcomic blog, which I read when it came out a decade ago, something like that. Is it 2007? That's more than a decade. I don't know. 2007 seems too long ago. I don't know. Anyway, I was familiar with it and I started to think about how it worked, and that's where I read this book. That's where these notes, the old notes I had, came from. And it's then become this part of my PhD, which is really unexpected but very fun. Yeah, I think I want to have that written by the end of the week, but I have so much time. I have so much time to do it in. And I think doing that is then going to make me feel a lot better. But I'm not going to do too much more today. I am going to send that. I do want to get this message sent off. So the message I'm going to send off is for the transformative works part, which is just to one of the fandom stats people, just to ask them if they've ever done any work on mental illness and fandom, or know anyone that has done any work on mental illness and fandom. I know they do reply to their Tumblr asks pretty regularly, but I don't know how many they get, so it might take a while. It's a thing for me to put out there and set going, rather than expecting a response soon. And yeah, I'll do that, and then I'm gonna call that done. And I'm gonna rest, because I didn't really get to rest. The problem with being stuck in a very horrible headspace is that it's not restful at all. It's the opposite of restful. So this time, that's what made the weekend even more stressful, is I was like, I'm meant to be resting, and this time not having this happen. So we'll make that happen today. We'll make some rest happen. And if I do then, like later on today, feel that I'm able to do stuff, I have a couple of recordings of lectures and stuff that I've got stored up, so I can watch some of those, and then if I feel up to it. I like how I went from I'm going to make sure I rest for the rest of today to, but if I want to do more work. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Rest is important. I'm shit at it. I don't know how do people rest? If anyone works it out, please tell me. Especially tell me how you rest when you're in constant pain and your brain weasels are screaming at you. Because if anyone works that one out, I think you could be a billionaire. But yeah, so I am gonna leave it there. Thank you, everyone, for being here and watching a person have a small emotional breakdown, and for some reason sticking with it. Thank you all for being here, and for all of your lovely support, because it really does help. Just imagine myself as Garfield, just sleep in the lasagna that I've half eaten. Got mince in lasagna, actually. Not gonna make lasagna. But I love lasagna, but it's a lot of effort. And thank you for following. Yeah, exactly. I have done and achieve. And I will now go and rest. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. My next stream is planned for Wednesday. Again, as always, I don't know what time exactly it will be. It will be in the GMT daytime, but it depends on when my body allows me to get out of bed. And yeah, we'll go through Fun Home and Solutions and Other Problems then, and bring together the last bit of stuff I need to then potentially on Friday write up this bit of this write-up. I think that's a really good progression, because it means that then I've got something concrete at the end of this week where I can go, yeah, fuck you, brain weasels, look, I did a thing. Um, yeah. I'm terrible at saying goodbye, so I'm just going to go. Thank you all so much for being here. Well, I love you, and I will see you again soon.